Who are the superhuman soldiers of David? Throughout biblical history, few men stand out as prominently as King David, the renowned monarch of ancient Israel. David's reign is celebrated not only for its political and religious significance, but also for the valiant warriors who served him, known as David's mighty men. David's mighty men, also known as David's mighty warriors, or the Gibborim, the mighty ones, are a group of 37 men in the Hebrew Bible who fought with King David and are identified in 2 Samuel chapter 23, verses 8 to 38. The International Standard Version calls them David's Special Forces. David was a great conqueror, but he was not a one-man show. There are several large sections of text in the Bible that name key military figures in David's army. These men helped him secure his throne. These elite fighters were not just soldiers, they were examples of loyalty, courage, and unwavering devotion. The stories of David's mighty men, recorded in the books of Samuel and Chronicles, showcase their extraordinary feats on the battlefield and their steadfast allegiance to their king. The tales of their achievements would make great theatrical movies and make for an engaging study. But before we go into the tales of these mighty men, it would be an act of disrespect if we didn't acknowledge the king himself, David. He wasn't just any ordinary king. He was the only king who never recorded any loss in battle. Even when the battle was between him and his household, he still didn't lose. This king fought about 66 battles throughout his lifetime and lost none of them. He has one of the greatest background stories. He didn't just gain the throne because he was anointed, he fought for it while still honoring the previous king. His story started as him being a shepherd boy in charge of his father's flocks. He would stay all day in the grassland, watching over his assigned flocks, but not just that. On different occasions, his flocks would be attacked by wolves, lions, bears, and all sorts of animals you expect to be in a typical grassland or wilderness. He always won the battles against these animals. Imagine a young boy facing off against a bear or a lion. Only a few men did that, of which some were part of his mighty 30, and the other was Samson. In Samson's case, the Spirit of the Lord would often overshadow him before he could do any terrible thing, such as facing the young lion and his enemies. David faced these animals and won. Though it wasn't recorded that the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, he just simply fought and won at that young age. But it was recorded that he feared the Lord greatly. This king, who had a reputation for facing danger head-on and overcoming it, who also faced the giant Goliath in battle and won, should be regarded as a mighty man of war. And no wonder he was fit to be king and chief general of his army, because his army contained men who did truly jaw-dropping things in battle. Now you might ask, who are these mighty men and what did they do that was so terrifying? We will go into that in a minute. I only have one quest for you. Can you be a mighty man or woman for us right now? If yes, then your first quest is to kindly like and subscribe to our channel to help us win the war against darkness and their agenda. If you have done so, you are fit to be a general in the comments section. Now, let's go into full details of who these mighty men are. Stay till the end of this video. This is your second quest. Who were David's mighty men? Just as in action movies or war movies, there is always a specific team of soldiers who are regarded as top fighters, like SEAL Team 6, Delta Force, or Alpha Squad. These men also have their classes. All of them are mighty men, but some are lord over some in terms of achievement and honor. These men were an elite force who helped David establish his kingdom. Their bravery is unparalleled, and their accomplishments would make any warrior squirm. The Bible gives us the names of these heroes, describes some of their incredible feats, and shows us how they were organized. According to 2 Samuel chapter 23, there were 37 men in total. Although this part of the text only mentions 35 by name, there are 50 plus in all the records combined. However, the 1 Chronicles chapter 11 includes most of the names from the 2 Samuel and adds several more. This leads us to believe that, like any standing military unit, the membership is fluid. As some men die, they are replaced by others. The names we see in the two texts are the names of those who were part of the 30 at one point or another. This could also mean that not all of these men were on the team the entire time. Some of these mighty men of David had considerable military skill and the blessing of God. David's mighty men served an important role in protecting the king and fighting for the freedom of their nation, the land of Israel. David's mighty men were a select group of warriors who distinguished themselves through acts of extraordinary valor and loyalty. This elite corps comprised individuals who stood out for their courage and unwavering commitment to King David. Men whose deeds became legendary in Israelite lore. These warriors were not only skilled in combat, but were deeply devoted to their leader, King David, whom they followed with unwavering loyalty. The full list of the mighty men of David is located in 2 Samuel chapter 23. But there is a certain man who is missing from the list. He seems to be the most influential but stubborn of them all. His name is Joab. There are two separate lists with the names of those who were part of this group. One is found in 1 Chronicles chapter 11 verses 10 to 47, and the other in 2 Samuel chapter 23. Joab's two brothers Abishai and Asahel appear on these lists. The Bible prominently mentions Abishai even though he had a hand in the murder of Abner. Joab, however, is not included. Could it be because he was always either the de facto leader or formal leader of David's army, and by mere rank was never part of this elite unit? Or was it that the treason at the end of David's reign would have sparked his removal from the highly praised 30? It is difficult to know for sure, but certainly worth discussing. However, we do not have enough information from the biblical text to determine if they deployed as a whole unit, as a group of 30-plus men. However, biblical evidence implies that the 30 operated in squads of 3. The Bible gives details on 2, possibly 3 distinct squads, and each one had its squad leader. We also know that some of those units of 3 were more distinguished than others, because it seems that this group might have evolved into more of an elite council, and its distinguished members were used to lead divisions across the military. The squads might have been how they operated in the 30s infancy. These mighty men of David were a group of David's toughest military warriors who were credited with heroic feats. They were also regarded as the 30 chiefs. Some, if not most, of the 30 joined David when he was fleeing from Saul. The biblical text mentions 2 or 3 by name: Ishmaiah the Gibeonite, Amasai, and possibly Jediel, seen in 1 Chronicles chapter 12 verse 4. 1 Samuel chapter 22 verse 2 states that while David was hiding from Saul, everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him. These were the kind of men who initially filled David's ranks, and many of them certainly would become part of the 30. This is labeled as their humble beginnings. The life these men led while following David in the wilderness would have been austere, desperate, and dangerous. A strong bond, not to mention unbreakable loyalty, must have developed between David and these warriors. It is also during these times that these men would have honed their skills and developed their prowess. As you know, the Bible didn't give a full account of all 30 of them, but it gave a little. But I did my research and found out a bit more about some of them. Let's talk about a few. Joab. Joab is David's nephew, the son of his sister Zeruiah, who became the commander of David's military during his reign. As a fearless and talented commander, he was responsible for the defeat and capture of many city-states. He remained fiercely loyal to King David until the end of his reign. At that point, however, he sided with David's son Adonijah to take the throne without his father's blessing. Joab was a complex individual who often acted impulsively against the king's wishes, for example, killing 3 men in cold blood: Abner, Absalom, and Amasa, commander of Absalom's army. Yet he was a key figure in helping David expand his kingdom. He was finally executed under Solomon for his betrayal at the end of David's life. Before Joab officially became the commander of the army, he was the de facto leader of David's men, second only to David. In 2 Samuel chapter 2 verse 14, there is a fierce encounter between Israel and Judah. Abner, the commander of Israel's army, addresses Joab as the leader of Judah's army. This is early in David's reign over Judah before uniting the kingdom. Despite having clear command of the army, we learn from the biblical text that his official title would come only later, after the capture of Jerusalem. Since it appears that David had not officially placed Joab in that position, one can only assume that he naturally took on that role. He had built a reputation for himself early on, and Abner, who had been the commander of the military under Saul and later Ishbosheth, was distinctly aware of who he was. Joab was a quick-witted person who acted according to what he thought was right or good. Although he didn't have any specific one-on-one battle in commanding the military, he was one of the most profound commanders. Some of his military achievements include the capture of Jerusalem. The story behind this is something. This is the story. The well-fortified city of Jebus, also known as Jerusalem, appeared to be impenetrable, but David had chosen it as his future capital. To spur ingenuity and bravery, David promised the title of commander-in-chief to whoever penetrated the city via a water shaft. Joab volunteered, and in achieving this feat, he made it possible for David to take the city. Joab also took the lead in repairing the city after the defeat of the Jebusites. This marks the beginning of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Another achievement is the victory against Edom. Joab struck down 12,000 from Edom at the Valley of Salt, Psalm chapter 60, verse 1. This victory came when Edom attacked from the south, while David and his army were otherwise engaged in the north. Well, we can say if he did it alone, but since he was a commander, we could say he did it with his army. But the Bible said Joab, not him and his army. Another achievement, successfully defending a simultaneous attack from the front and rear, Joab was able to repel combined Ammonite and Syrian forces attacking both his front and rear. This is no small military feat. His impromptu decision to split his army into a smaller elite group to face the Syrians, while the remainder of the army attacked the Ammonites. The capture of Rabbah. Rabbah was a city with natural defenses, but its capture was necessary for Israel to control the entire region. Joab broke through the city's defenses and captured its water supply. With control of the city's water source, the capitulation of the entire city was imminent. However, Joab restrained himself from taking the city and saved the final conquest for David. The defeat of Absalom's rebellion. Joab helped defeat Absalom's rebellion, leading 1/3 of David's forces, while 2 other commanders led the rest to victory. Benaiah. Benaiah was a warrior's warrior. He was the stuff of legends. He was particularly skilled in hand-to-hand combat with speed and reflexes to subdue the best of the best. 2 Samuel 23:20-22 and 1 Chronicles chapter 11 verses 22-23 give us a taste of just how savage he was in the face of his enemies. He is praised for 3 mighty feats, striking down 2 Ariels of Moab, killing a lion in a pit, and defeating an Egyptian giant. Let's do a brief touch on these feats. Killing the Ariels of Moab. The true definition of the Hebrew word behind Ariels is unknown. Because the Hebrew is derived from 2 root words meaning lion and God, scholars surmise that it could mean lion-like men. Does that mean these were men who were as fierce as lions? Or a hybrid species of men like the giants that existed back then? We don't know for sure. What we do know is that these men were ferocious fighters, or otherwise what is the point of telling the story in a chapter full of stories of men accomplishing great feats? These Ariels were not mere men. They were the kind of fighters that would make a foot soldier shake in his sandals. And Benaiah killed 2 of them, killing the lion in the pit. On a cold, snowy day, Benaiah was strolling along and found a lion in a pit. And he thought, why not? And hurled himself in to face off with the trapped creature. Okay, his reason for killing the lion might have been more than just male bravado. The more likely scenario, especially based on Benaiah's character, was that the lion posed a danger to dwellers nearby. However, the text is scant on the details, but killing a lion is no small achievement, especially if you decide to join him in the pit and limit your options for escape. Benaiah probably only had a sword and/or a spear, yet with no special powers other than his good reflexes and vast experience as a fighter, Benaiah bested that lion. And that little incident would certainly further his reputation. Killing of an Egyptian giant. The Bible provides us a little more detail of Benaiah's final feat, and it would make any expert in hand-to-hand combat fear. Benaiah came face to face with a spectacular Egyptian. This Egyptian was not like the rest. He was 5 cubits tall. Not quite as tall as Goliath, but if a cubit is indeed about 18 inches long, that would put the Egyptian at about 7.5 feet. Aside from the Egyptian's height, Benaiah was outarmed. While the Egyptians held a spear, Benaiah was stuck with only a staff, or a club according to some translations. I guess that the Egyptian grossly underestimated his chances against Benaiah. He was bigger and had a better weapon. But speed was Benaiah's greatest asset. It had to be if he killed a lion, and you wouldn't know it until it was upon you. Well, Benaiah outmaneuvered the Egyptian, wrestled the spear out of his hand, and proceeded to kill him with it. David's military was divided into three primary elements: the army commanded by Joab, the militia, a reserve force, and the royal bodyguard. Benaiah, at various points of his career, held command in all three. Benaiah was the commander of the 30 at one point. See 1 Chronicles chapter 27, verse 6. Benaiah also was responsible for overseeing the militia during the third month. In 1 Chronicles 27, we can summarize that the militia was organized into 12 divisions to account for each month of the year. In other words, these reserved units would be called up to serve once a year for a month. Each month had a different commander, and Benaiah was responsible for the division assigned to the third month. Benaiah spent the majority of his military career as the commander of the royal army. This was a unique position, as the guard was made up of foreign fighters, the Cherthites and the Pelethites, as seen in 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 18. These set of people were often called mercenaries. Mercenaries are like extremely trained soldiers, just like assassins or ninjas. These set of people are often the most skilled in the army. Benaiah was responsible for the elimination of Joab, Adonijah, and Shimei. His command was the exact opposite of Joab's. He was calm, tempered, and gracious. His cool, respectful demeanor shines through in the interaction between him and Joab before Joab's execution. He was also younger than David. He was about 15 to 20 years younger than him. Abishai. He is not as well known as his notorious brother Joab, but he is just as capable and just as fearless. Abishai held two prominent positions within David's military. He typically commanded a division in the army and was a member of the exclusive military club known as the 30. He was also David's nephew. When Saul was pursuing David in the wilderness of Ziph, Abishai fearlessly volunteered to accompany King David on a suicidal mission. Through scouts, David learns of Saul's location and asks both a Hittite warrior and Abishai if either will follow him into the enemy's lair. Abishai volunteers, and he and David sneak into the camp undetected. With impressive stealth, both men reach a sleeping Saul and steal his sword and a jug of water. When David was in his 60s, Israel was again at war with the Philistines. By this point, most giants had been killed, but 4 remained who fought with the Philistines. One of them, Ishbi-Benob, sought David in the field of battle and almost killed him. David was no longer that young, vibrant warrior who slew Goliath with a sling. Age had taken its toll, and it showed on the battlefield. Abishai reached David in time to save him from the giant, no doubt using his superb skills as a warrior to best Ishbi-Benob. However, this incident effectively ends David's military career. David's men told him he was no longer able and capable of joining his forces in the heat of battle. 3 brothers seemed to give David a headache in his army. They were Joab, Abishai, and Asahel, sons of Zeruiah. As for Joab and Abishai, they were impulsive, rugged, and bloodthirsty. They never hesitated to draw the sword. Asahel. Asahel was King David's nephew and the younger brother of Joab and Abishai. David's sister Zeruiah was the mother of this elite trio. Asahel was very much loved and regarded by his brothers, so much so that his death would lead both Joab and Abishai to murder his killer. Asahel had the distinction of being named one of the 30, aka David's mighty men. It is probably for this reason that his death was shocking. The Bible says, "And all who came to the place where Asahel had fallen and died stood still." 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 23. The loss of any warrior is tragic, especially to those who stood on his left and right. However, the death of an elite fighter can reverberate across an entire army. So at the place where Asahel fell, men stood to honor their fallen brother. What is not well known about Asahel is that he is listed as one of the leaders of the militia. He was the division commander of the 4th month, that is of 24,000 men. The militia was not part of the regular army that Joab commanded, but a separate group likely called up during times of prolonged war. In addition to being a skilled fighter, Asahel was seen as a capable leader. All 3 of Zeruiah's sons were fierce not only in their skill, but also in character. They were not men easily frightened, but all 3 had trouble controlling their passions. While Joab was the more notorious of the three, Asahel shared in his brother's lack of self-control. Why does God take the time to list each of these individuals by name and tell some of their stories of bravery and courage? Because they operated under the will of God. The 30 were instrumental in achieving God's will and helped David secure his throne. David was a brilliant military leader who succeeded not of his might alone, but because of the mighty men God gave him. Some of these men didn't have a story attached to their name, but for their name to be listed in the Bible and for them to be part of the mighty 30 meant that they were no ordinary men. They were mighty indeed. If you enjoyed this video and found it entertaining, please like and subscribe to this channel. God bless you.